I would like to welcome you to this 15th webinar hosted by the Institute of Economic Affairs based here in Nairobi. Now, the Institute of Economic Affairs is a public policy think tank, and we hold such like forums on key topical issues just to get a feel of, of course, disseminate public education, get to learn more about the topical issue, and also get questions and queries from members of the public as to what these topics portend for them now and in the future. Today, the subject of discussion is on cryptocurrencies. And just by way of background, I would like to introduce a few things before I introduce our speakers for the day. Now, the issue of cryptocurrency is not new in Kenya. It has been here with us for a while. And I think the term cryptocurrencies is mostly synonymous with Bitcoin. If I stand to be corrected. But that being said, it's been here with us for a while. I remember back in 2018, the Institute of Economic Affairs held a public forum just to try and to discuss the issues around cryptocurrencies in Kenya. We had a presentation from some members of the task force that was then looking at the issues of artificial intelligence and blockchains. We had a view from the Bank Association of Kenya, and also we looked at the opportunities for the financial sector then. This was compiled into a policy brief that was shared within the IEA's website, and I think the link is available. I shared it widely on our social media platforms and as well to the members. So today the issue will be, as you can see from the program that is shared on your screen. Firstly, kindly accept apologies from our Chief Executive, Mr. Kwame Wino, who has been who got a call from the Parliamentary Committee on Financial Parliamentary Committee to make a presentation on IEA's proposals on the finance bill that is still ongoing. So that's why he's not available to be with us here. But nonetheless, this has to go on. So as you can see from the agenda, we have two presentations. One is from Roslyn Wanjiru, who is the board member for Blockchain Association of Kenya. And what we want her to actually speak to is just really what has been the process of cryptocurrency adoption in Kenya over the years, and perhaps delve much more deeper into the use case of cryptocurrencies in Kenya, sectors or otherwise as she may deem fit for the benefit of you, our audience. Then we'll have the second presentation from Alan Kakai, who's the Director of Legal at the same place, Blockchain Association of Kenya. And all we'll be looking at what we'll expect him to give us and to delve much deeper into is the aspect of the regulatory environment within which this is taking place in Kenya. Noting the fact that the Central Bank of Kenya, which is the regulator in this space, has been blowing hot and cold for a while now on this issue. Notwithstanding that we have the central bank digital currencies that were proposed sometime last year in place. I think we have some proposals as well in the finance bill towards taxation of cryptocurrencies, or as they call digital assets, for going forward. So that's in a nutshell where we are at. So I would like to invite Roslyn. Kindly go ahead. I'll stop my presentation and I'll allow you to share yours. Then you can switch on your microphone if that would be okay with you, and kindly educate us more on the adoption of cryptocurrencies so far in Kenya and what you see the future being in that space. So, Roslyn?
The Blockchain Association of Kenya is an organization registered as a society that has been focused on creating awareness around issues to do with cryptocurrency education in Kenya since 2016, 2017. It was actually in the wake of a lot of scams that had disadvantaged people and left a lot of people without a redress in terms of where they could go and who they could run to when these scams actually took off in Nairobi. So through organizing events and bringing people together just to highlight key issues that are pertinent about cryptocurrencies, such as what is a cryptocurrency, what does it mean to buy one, how can you identify a scam. This was all covered during the different meetups that were organized especially in 2017, 2018 by the association. So the association has grown to connect quite a lot of companies within the cryptocurrency ecosystem in Kenya. However, we'll identify and I'll highlight some of the challenges that the organization has faced over the years. So thank you for this. I'm happy to introduce myself as an economist. I am an economist, and I focused on the research that is connected to this budding industry, because as we'll see, there are so many interest areas in the cryptocurrency space. So this is just a presentation overview. Allow me to go to the next slide. So as a quick fact, we have the value of the cryptocurrency market globally globally at $1.14 trillion. This has grown from the initial days when it was barely valuable. It's highly speculative. And this is set to grow in the next couple of years. It could be twice as much, or it could be 4 times as much. The future is uncertain, but as of now, this is where we stand. Next slide, please. I'll begin with a few definitions just for anybody who may not necessarily be privy to what these technologies are. So allow me to begin with the foundation of what cryptocurrencies are run on. So what is blockchain technology? This is a distributed ledger, what you call a database. A lot of people use the terms blockchain and cryptocurrency interchangeably. However, they're quite different in the sense that the supporting technology or the principles that govern how cryptocurrencies work are rested in blockchain technology in itself. So it runs on principles of mathematics and cryptography, and that's why you will find these distributed ledgers are difficult to manipulate or corrupt unless there is a consensus in the system by the people who are maintaining the database. So in the same way that you have time, no entry can be made twice. We will not have, for example, 10:13 a.m. at on a date like 23rd of May. You will have 10:13 a.m. but on the 24th of May. But once this time is gone, it cannot be repeated after this. So on a blockchain, when the data is entered, it has a timestamp or what you call a hash, which is a unique digital signature that locks it to that particular time. So this distributed ledger relies on a system of validators rather than a single administrator. So if you have one singular admin who has control over a database in an organization and maybe they corrupt it or they make a fraudulent entry, it's difficult to know. And that's why whenever you have investigation of problems that have to do with finances, they can take years because you don't know sometimes how far back the fraud has gone. But in a blockchain, then this would be traceable quite in a short time, because the latest record of the latest record in the system is visible to everybody at the same time. If you try to delete one record, it does not affect the entire system. You can go to the next slide. So now what are cryptocurrencies? So if blockchain is a foundation, then cryptocurrency is an application. And these are basically digital signatures or digital tokens that represent a proof of a transaction. I know that sounds like a bit of a mouthful. However, if we can just refer to it as an application. So for a parallel, for those who were in the early days of the internet, email was the first application that was quite widely used. But on the on the foundation of now what the internet has offered us, we have seen the rise of so many businesses and opportunities and applications that we use to date in our day-to-day applications, which maybe back then would not have been envisioned. However, it's a similar path with blockchain and cryptocurrencies, that the distributed ledger gives us an alternative system of storing data securely. So cryptocurrencies are the first financial application of this technology, whereby you can trace money and send it securely from one person to another, and it's a fantastic technology simply because it's borderless. Now there are over 2,000 cryptocurrencies. I say 2,000 as a cutoff because of the more than 10,000 that are out there. Not all of them have a wide application or a great community, and in this sense, I also filtered it because there are, of these 2,000, then among the largest, then the ones that tend to have higher volumes of say market trading and things like that. So to filter this, then we have different types of cryptocurrencies as well. There are utility coins, there are security tokens. Some of them are stable coins. And sometimes when we have people interchangeably using blockchain and crypto, then you can see the difference that Bitcoin is but one type of a cryptocurrency. It was actually by design made to be a peer-to-peer payment system, much like PayPal or M-Pesa. However, it's evolved to be what some would call digital gold or a commodity. So there are different discussions around how Bitcoin is supposed to be treated in different jurisdictions. Is it a security or not? In some countries, it's treated as a commodity. In some countries, it's treated as a payment system, which is not taxable. And in some other countries, it's legal tender, like El Salvador. So in the next 5 years, I'm sure we will have a clearer legal application in different jurisdictions of what cryptocurrencies are. But the foundation is just that they are digital applications of what blockchain technology has to offer. So there are definitely other applications like non-fungible tokens, but those are not the focus for today. So how are they adopted in Kenya? The main use cases as how we have seen different Kenyans interacting with cryptocurrency. Remittances definitely coming in from, say, the diaspora and coming into Kenya locally, and also from Kenya to the diaspora. Second use case is speculation, whereby some people will, hold a cryptocurrency in the anticipation that its value will rise. The third is investing, whereby some people look at the long-term view and application of cryptocurrencies, and they opt to do their analysis, be it fundamental or technical analysis, and choose to invest in them. Definitely it's a high risk affair, but there's no instrument, be it in real estate or stock markets, that is purely risk free. Then for freelance work, we have some people who have interacted with platforms like PayPal, and when there are bottlenecks in terms of their PayPal accounts maybe being blocked for one reason or another, or they can't cash out through M-Pesa, then they opt to use cryptocurrencies to receive their payments. And a fifth use case is cross-border trade. So we see this especially with trying to interact and move money from one country to another. The high transaction fees, if you have done business in just Kenya to Tanzania, before you deal with conversion rates sometimes, and forex exchange rates can be quite costly, then people are finding an alternative in terms of payment through cryptocurrencies, but mostly through stable coins, since they are not as speculative in their value as compared to other cryptocurrencies. You can proceed to the next slide. What challenges are we facing in terms of cryptocurrency adoption? The first and most fundamental is education, because these cryptocurrencies are still being viewed in the lens of traditional finance, which is still quite complex for the average citizen, because before somebody understands how to to do their banking, international money transfers. There's still a lot of education to be done, and that's why financial literacy is extremely valuable for both traditional finance and this future of digital finance, right? That goes in hand with scams, because you have people who will set up events and claim to be educating people, but they're just directing them in a funnel to siphon their funds away, right? Because every scammer that has succeeded in Kenya has managed to to pass on some information, but it was not the correct information. So we still need to have a lot of collaboration between institutions, government, and different entities to reach as many people as possible to bring a proper understanding of what cryptocurrencies are, so that people can actually use them in the right way. There is also limited access to international
Sorry,
forefront
you're breaking
markets.
off.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Sorry. You broke off. You broke off a few minutes ago. Just a second. Pick it up from limited access
All right,
and
thank you.
yeah.
Okay, so in terms of limited access, then you have we for example, if you're trying to buy a cryptocurrency in Kenya, you may not be able to use international platforms like Coinbase, which is one of the largest, one of the world's largest, exchange platforms that allow people to convert your like fiat currency like Kenya shilling directly to maybe Bitcoin. That process takes several steps, and being able to compare different platforms where someone can actually buy the cryptocurrency in the first place. So this goes on the heels of education as well, because you find that these service providers have to do a lot of tutorials just to get people to be able to convert their national currencies to some of these digital currencies. So that process being complex also does not make it easy for for most people, but that challenge is definitely going to be a thing of the past in the next few years, with some of these platforms being just made easier to use for the masses. Then definitely the challenge of regulatory uncertainty, because, for example, you cannot have a banking service that allows you to directly transact with cryptocurrencies in Kenya. So that these technical difficulties have made it quite difficult for people to be able to transact and use cryptocurrencies in Kenya. But I'll say that challenge is also opportunity. That it does not stop people from being able to use them. It just presents challenges to people being part of the ecosystem. Then we have another big challenge in terms of interoperability with USSD, because for most Kenyans, they are comfortable using the M-Pesa platform. So we only have one service, one cryptocurrency service called Machankura, and this is not a direct recommendation of them, but it works by actually enabling a USSD purchase of cryptocurrency and transfer. So those are the main challenges that are facing crypto adoption in Kenya. Allow me just to go to the next slide, so that this is just a comparison, but it's for reference. I will not go over it right now. Let's go to the next slide. Next slide. Yes, this one, the one right after that. All right. So, in spite of the challenges and the opportunity for people to actually interact with cryptocurrencies, we can watch out for these trends in terms of adoption that will actually make it easier. Because sometimes when the larger organizations that have scale and millions of users on their platform integrate now cryptocurrencies, it might actually be easier through them, because it's the same way that now we can use any of Google services or Microsoft services without us having to develop these services to our own local needs. So, for example, in terms of transportation and logistics, we can look at what Maersk and UPS are doing. In terms of energy, we can look at companies like Power Ledger and Melanin Solar. In healthcare, there are companies that are looking to integrate different applications, and once you get a picture of how these use cases are integrated in the wider context of industry, our conversation, let's say 5 years from now or 10 years from now, won't be how complex cryptocurrencies are, but just how just how interoperable they are with different services. So in a nutshell, we are looking at the benefits of higher transparency in in our financial transactions and lower costs in terms of being able to transact in borderless platforms. So it should be easy for anyone in Kenya who is looking to either to invest globally or to earn from other countries or to just trade with other countries, even as we have the Africa, Free Continental Agreement, the AFCTA. It's that, we will have an option to be able to transact seamlessly, and we can appreciate just how important it is to have seamless gateways of finance. So if we have seamless communication, we have seamless finance, then it's all about the value that we have to offer and we have to create. So for now, the engagement with cryptocurrencies may be complex, but in a few years, it will be just how easy it is and how much value we are able to create. So we've also seen NFTs and the metaverse as a recent discussion in especially the last 2 years, but it may not be as trending right now. However, for the creator economy and for especially people who are in the music industry or the arts industry, these are vital applications to consider in the years to come. So allow me to conclude the presentation for now just by saying that we have we have an opportunity. There are challenges, but the more we can collaborate to appreciate this opportunity here, we will be able to create value for ourselves and for our communities. I had over prepared, let me say, for this presentation, but I believe what I've been able to cover for now is the most important, and this presentation will be shared for those who want to take a deeper dive into how to apply technical analysis, investment strategies to consider. But that is those are topics that can be covered subsequently.
Thanks so much, Rosalind, for that very insightful presentation. Not to rehash what you said, I think I have a couple of questions for you as well, but that will come in at the plenary session. So I think Rosina has given us a lowdown in terms of the value, and perhaps we want to know of that global value. How much does Kenya have, or what is the share of Kenya in that particular value? And then perhaps I would like to know in the use cases, specifically, how are these matters conducted within the cryptocurrency space or blockchains, as you say. And that difference is very important for people to know that the building blocks, blockchain is what cryptocurrency is based upon. And now that brings upon the various types of cryptos over the 2000 you mentioned. Challenges are there, of course, levels of awareness amongst Kenyans. And as we move on to the next presentation, not to preempt everything else, is the regulatory uncertainty that there exists. So thanks again, Rosalind, for that. If anyone has any questions, we'll have a session for the plenary, whereupon we'll be able to ask and get responses to your burning questions. So as I welcome our next presenter, Alan Kakai, who is the legal director at Blockchain Association of Kenya. Just to give a short snippet of perhaps what you would like to speak about is the fact that we had a caution by the Central Bank of Kenya back in 2015, and to the best of my recollection, that has not been withdrawn. So in as much as the central bank blows hot and cold, what is your take on the legal regulatory landscape for cryptos in Kenya? So welcome, Kakai. Take it away.
Okay. So before I start my presentation, I just want to share that the blockchain and cryptocurrency ecosystem, this week we are celebrating something called the Bitcoin Pizza Day. This day is very interesting because about 13 years ago, that was on 22nd May 2010, there's somebody who used 10,000 Bitcoins to order for pizza in the US. 13 years later, those 10,000 Bitcoins are worth about $268.66 million. So that just shows how much cryptocurrency has blown up from 10,000 Bitcoins worth being 2 pieces of pizza all the way to a valuation of above $200 million. So that's a very interesting thing to note. So yes, the regulatory landscape for cryptocurrencies in Kenya. So my presentation will cover 3 things. What is the current regulatory framework for cryptocurrencies in Kenya? What are the main challenges facing cryptocurrencies in Kenya? And what are the main opportunities for the cryptocurrency regulation in Kenya? So straight to part 1. What is the current regulatory framework? So for me to bring you up to speed on the current regulatory framework, I've structured my presentation in form of a regulatory roadmap that will start all the way from the first time the CBK ever commented on cryptocurrencies, all the way to this week when we submitted our response to the Finance Bill 2023 with respect to the digital asset tax. So in terms of regulatory framework, in 2015, that was the first time ever CBK commented on cryptocurrencies, and it was not in good light. Of course, they were against it. So they issued a cautionary notice to all financial institutions, that is banks, microfinance, and financial institutions that are subject to CBK regulation, restricting them, or rather just cautioning them from handling any virtual currencies or transacting with entities involved in virtual currencies. They advised that Bitcoin is not a legal tender in Kenya, and therefore no protection exists. So around this time, Bitcoin was the only form of cryptocurrency, and the position of Kenya, the position of the CBK was that it was against cryptocurrency. But this, however, did not mean that cryptocurrency is illegal. It just meant that CBK and financial institutions under it, banks and all that, were not allowed to deal with cryptocurrency. But still, Kenyans who are passionate about it would find ways of trading through wallets. Roslyn has talked about wallets and cryptocurrency platforms. So they will still trade across the wallets, but not within the conventional financial sector. So a further notice of the same was further issued in just to reinforce this position that financial institutions should avoid dealing with the virtual currencies. So this was followed by CBK's cousin CMA, who issued a public notice on 21st February 2018, warning Kenyans against participating in initial coin offerings. An initial coin offering is basically, from guys in the financial industry, can juxtapose it to what the conventional industry will call it, an initial public offering. If I have a company and I want to trade it in the Nairobi Stock Exchange, an initial public offering would mean me offering my shares, the shares to my company, for members of the public to buy shares into the company. So an initial coin offering from a blockchain now perspective is, I have a cryptocurrency or a blockchain project, and I want to receive funds for me to take the project to the next level. I'll roll out tokens or coins of my project and invite members of the public to purchase those coins. So essentially, they're holding coins the same way somebody will hold securities. But now CMA was against this. And it was very clear that CMA's position was that initial coin offerings are unregulated and speculative investments, and therefore it will not entertain anybody doing ICOs in Kenya. So up to 2018, we find that 2 government entities are against crypto products, but still it did not mean that they're illegal. Because the guys in decentralized exchanges, guys will still trade cryptocurrency in decentralized and centralized exchanges, but these aspects that were cautioned or restricted by CMA were the areas that people could not touch. So now this leads up to March 2018, whereby Jairo mentioned the Ministry of ICT formed the innovation, the Distributed Ledgers and Artificial Intelligence Task Force that did a very awesome work. They did a roadmap on emerging technologies, and they did a very detailed report. And they did a very detailed report now, which leads us to 2019. So March 2019, of course, CMA regulatory sandbox was formed. And the CMA regulatory sandbox is just a sandbox for fintech and financial innovation products that have not really figured out what area of regulation they fall under. And the cryptocurrency is one of them, but I'll also touch on their perspective for crypto products. So it allows fintechs and the guys doing financial products and products that could be regulated by CMA to go and test out the breadth and length of their products and weigh that against prevailing regulations. So now back to the task force. The task force that was formed later on issued a report in July 2019. This report had 4 takeouts. Number one, it advised that a passive approach to digital currency is not advisable given the current advancements in technology. So essentially telling the government can now just be sitting there and issuing circulars and issuing notices. The government needs to be more proactive in trying to understand and learn from this industry. And my previous presenter, Roslyn, was actually had an opportunity of making a presentation in front or before that task force, and which was very awesome. So essentially, it was the first time the government is trying to proactively learn and understand the intricacies of this industry, as opposed to just issuing cautionary notices and sitting aside. So it also made a proposal of provision for the National Payment Systems Act that provides how payments in Kenya operate. That will mandate CBK to, for the purposes of payment, probably to license and regulate cryptocurrencies and other alternative payments. That was just the second proposal. Then, of course, the third proposal was that it also made a recommendation for leveraging on the current CMA legal framework and for purposes of adoption of cryptocurrency, and also apparently made a recommendation on the creation of the CBDC, which later on I'll cover in this presentation. So that was the task force. Now, this now leads up to September of 2019. Now, you remember, as I mentioned earlier, the late 2018 CMA had issued a disclaimer against doing ICOs, but this guy, around that time, this guy is called Wiseman Talent Managers who are actually doing an ICO. So I think this clashed with their interest. And that period between 2018 and 2019, they went to court. So there was a case against. So following the issuing of that notice in CMA, Western Talent Managers went to court against CMA. This is the first time you're seeing somebody in the crypto space trying to advance their interests before a court of law. So the question before court was, number one, whether cryptocurrencies are under the mandate of CMA and whether CMA has a statutory, to that extent, whether CMA has a statutory mandate to restrain or to issue such notices or just to guide the direction to which crypto and related products will take. Interestingly, the court used the court found that used a test called the Howey test, which I'll cover later on. But the Howey test is a test that is based on the United States jurisprudence, American jurisprudence, that the US in the Howey case used to clarify and classify cryptocurrencies as security. So the High Court of Kenya used the same threshold and ended up classifying cryptocurrencies as securities. And to that extent, the High Court of Kenya found that CMA had a say on matters cryptocurrencies. And to that extent, Wiseman Talent Ventures were barred from proceeding with the ICOs. So I'm going to cover what classification of cryptocurrency looks like in Kenya and what the Howey test looks like, because that is the test that the Kenyan jurisprudence based on that act and based on the CMA amendment bill. That is the test that Kenya is using to classify cryptocurrencies as security. So we come to April 2021, the CMA regulatory sandbox that was formed has now been proactively engaging in the industry. So of course, after formation of the sandbox, it was getting a lot of applications from guys who are trying to do tokens in real estate, guys who are trying to do tokens in the share market, guys who are trying to explore different interesting use cases of cryptocurrency. However, CMA was not taking up crypto native projects. It was taking other fintech projects, but they were not fully ready for crypto projects. And there was even just an event yesterday where we had somebody from the sandbox present and still indicated that still the same position. They're still trying to weigh how they would pick up these cryptocurrency projects. But one thing the CMA in their milestone report 2021 noted is that They're facing challenges considering applications for crypto services, and these are the challenges that they're trying to navigate around. Number one, the novelty and complexity of the concept. Roslyn has already extensively covered how this area can be complex, because from a layman perspective, we're just looking at it as cryptocurrencies. And that is usually the first mistake, categorizing all of them under one blanket definition as cryptocurrencies. And that is even the problem we as a committee have with regard to the proposed tax laws. So complexity comes in the sense that when you go down to the details and read between the lines, these cryptocurrencies, as Lucian has covered, have different use cases. We have stable coins, we have governance tokens, we have refi tokens. We have all these tokens that have unique and specific use cases. And even classifying all of them, for instance, under securities is an injustice. And so all these complexities is what CMA regulatory sandbox is trying to understand. And that is a challenge, not only the CMA is facing, but a lot of regulators are facing, just understanding the complex nature of this concept. And number one, this is a very highly evolving area, in the sense that by the time you figure out what Bitcoin is, people are already talking about NFTs. By the time you figure out what NFTs are, people are already talking about refi tokens. By the time you figure out what refi tokens are, people are already doing AI tokens and all that. So that complexity and highly evolving nature of technology usually gives regulators a hard time. And now that speaks to point number two, which the point that the insufficient information regarding the risk universe in this area. And now the third aspect is, given that it's a newly evolving area, it's just a recent development. There's nobody who can extensively call themselves an expert in this area, given that something is popping up every day. There's lack of internal capacity, not only in CMA, but even in CBK, KRA, and internal government and government offices. Lack of internal capacities that will just enable them properly understand how to approach this. And of course, there's also now the CBK that, following the CBK circulars, the banks are very skeptical on touching cryptocurrencies. And given that they're very speculative, there's just general fears of CMA not wanting to involve this project itself with some projects that are just volatile and have the potential of probably affecting local currency. So for instance, in the sense that if CBK legalized cryptocurrency as a tender right now, and said, okay, cryptocurrency is illegal in Kenya, you can use crypto to buy, sell goods and all that. The risk for that is that right now we've seen how Kenyans are suffering and the economy is tough. So the risk for legalizing cryptocurrency from an economics perspective is that there's a potential that if it's a legal tender, all Kenyans can all of a sudden rush and try to withdraw their money from their SACCOs and their banks, to convert them to cryptos like Bitcoin, which they feel are probably more stable and more international than the Kenyan currency. This means that banks' liquidity will go down and now just creates a whole, creates a lot of challenges when it comes to now the economics of that. So that is also what the regulator is trying to understand while approaching this cryptocurrency sector. Also, another thing from a crypto perspective, if I can just mention that, is the guys who are already conventionally and guys who are already established in the industry. By that, I'm referring to people like the Nairobi Stock Exchange and companies trading the Nairobi Stock Exchange. So if a company floats its shares out in the stock exchange to the public to buy shares, they have no competition in terms of other securities. But for instance, the risk to them is that if CBK or CMA were to formally acknowledge cryptocurrency as an alternative form of securities, a lot of these companies publicly trading in the stock exchange have a risk of losing their retail traders to cryptocurrency exchanges. So that risk of shifting a market from one conventional market to this whole new market gets some makes guys who are already established and who are already making their living from this established industry even afraid to support the crypto industry, which I'll even cover further. So in 2020, we see the banking supervision report. So you've seen the history from 2015, and this is 2020 where we are seeing the CBK is starting to lighten up. They're not acknowledging crypto, but they're starting to lighten up in terms of regulation. And you see here, I quoted them in verbatim saying, in the Banking Solutions report, they note that there is no clear evidence that cryptocurrency present material risks to financial stability and monetary policy at this stage. However, continuous monitoring of the size of market and growth of cryptocurrencies is prudent. So, in tandem with other financial sector regulators, CBK just made a call to continue public participation and sensitizing the public about potential risks posed by cryptocurrencies. So now, February, so that is 2020. So 2 years later, after sensitizing and learning and probably taking time to just study what other countries are doing and understanding the reds and greens of the crypto, CBK rolled out a discussion paper for issuing a central bank digital currency. And it was inviting members of the public to comment about it. Now, from my perspective, it's a good thing. CBK is showing that, okay, it's interested in getting now into the crypto space by issuing their stablecoin as CBDC. On the flip is that a few years back, the court has classified cryptocurrencies as securities. Now, the question there will be, and I hope CBK will be in a position to answer this question once they check for this project will be, if all cryptocurrencies are going to be classified as securities, will the CBDC be an exemption to that, or it will also be a security? And so that conflict is what also I would wish the regulators to understand, and now which goes back to the question of having regulators understand the specific use cases and particulars of each token, so that if CBDC is classified as a currency, then that would mean other stable coins like the USDC and other stable coins would be put on the same threshold as that CBDC. So last year, that is December 2022, the Joint Financial Sector Regulators Forum formed a technical working group that now will give recommendations to the National Treasury on how to regulate crypto. Now, this now flows up to now 2020, where now we've started seeing tax proposal with respect to how the digital assets, digital currencies, and related products will be taxed. So we've seen the Capital Markets Amendment Bill of 2023, which has proposed two taxes: the income tax on income and on income derived from trades of digital assets, and also the capital gains tax. We've also seen that this Capital Markets Amendment Bill is proposing to license persons who are trying to introduce. So, for instance, somebody who wants to do an ICO trying to introduce a new cryptocurrency product will be subject to licensing by CME. However, from my reading of the Act, I also felt that the Act is not really exhaustive, and it still fails to take note of and acknowledge the specific intricacies and particular use cases of each token. And I will cover that as a challenge, and I would really wish for regulators, and we as BK were trying to just have a sit down and understand that how each use case works, how each token works, and the different intricacies in regulating cryptocurrencies. So we've also seen the VAT, the proposed VAT regulations, which now purport to impose VAT for online payments or exchange of digital assets. So this will mean that digital that cryptocurrency exchanges like Binance and Paxful and all that will be subject to VAT for transaction for the services offered within the platform. And we've seen recently, 7th March 2023, the finance bill, which now tries to introduce the digital asset tax of 3% on income derived from transfer and exchange of digital assets. So we also had our own reservations on how that tax is approached, and I will cover it in as some of the challenges. Now this now leads all this history. I was just trying to give this background and see how the regulator has been blowing hot and cold with cryptocurrency and what this leads to and where does this put us. So this concludes two things. One, how is cryptocurrencies classified in Kenya? So apart from the gray area that CBDC is probably trying to put itself on the same threshold as the Kenyan currency, the Wiseman Talent Ventures case classified cryptocurrencies as securities. What was their threshold of the rationale for classifying this? Was the Howey test. The Howey test was a case in the US that now ended up classifying cryptocurrencies as securities in the US. It's a four-tier test that first threshold must be met, that the regulator, the court, or whoever will ask themselves this question: is this token you're issuing an investment for money? And if it is, are there expectation for profits from that investment? And if the expectation for investment is the investment of money in a common enterprise. And if that is the case, then are profits that come of the efforts of a promoter or a third party. So this is how it is. Interestingly, does not apply to all types of cryptocurrencies. So this is what Rosalina was talking about when she mentioned that even not locally alone, a lot of regulators are finding hard to classify whether cryptocurrencies are securities or they're just currencies or whatever, because each token has a specific use. For instance, if we went with Bitcoin probably could pass this test. But if we went with governance tokens in DAOs, governance tokens within a DAO is a decentralized autonomous organization, essentially a chairman built on blockchain. So you're issued the governance tokens that allows you to vote and have some certain rights. It's just a token that allows somebody to hold rights. So when you put in the threshold, like somebody is expecting profits or investment for money, it does not pass that test. But now classifying it as securities now will mean that you've not fully explored and understood what governance tokens are. So the conclusion is that there are several types of tokens. You have utility tokens, you have governance tokens, we have stablecoins, we have now payment tokens like Bitcoin, and all these tokens have unique use cases. And from my perspective, classifying all of them as securities is a shallow approach. So now this jurisprudence was what CMA relied on when they were doing the CMA Amendment Bill in 2023. And it made a proposal to extend the definition of securities to include digital currencies. So currently, as we stand, if this CMA Amendment Bill came into force, cryptocurrencies in Kenya would be regarded as securities, all of them irrespective of the use cases. So now, having known this classification, having understood this, what are the current regulatory challenges facing cryptocurrencies in Kenya? So I put the challenges in two first. There's regulatory challenges from the regulator's perspective as CBK, as CMA. What do I feel like the challenges facing me when I'm trying to regulate this industry? And then the second set of challenges is as a builder in the space, as a trader, as a founder, as a policy expert in the space. What are the challenges that are facing me when I'm trying to interact with CBK and CMA? So I've already covered these 5 challenges that were indicated by the CMA regulatory sandbox in their milestone report for 2021. Just to repeat, is number one, is novelty and complexity of the concept, the insufficient information regarding the risk universe in the area, the lack of internal capacity in a lot of these government institutions, and skepticism by bank, objections by bank, given the CBK cautionary notice, and fears on the volatility affecting this local currency. So these I already covered, and that is what, from the CMA perspective, as a regulator, that is what they felt as their challenges. Now, extensively, we've been doing a baseline survey and engaging people from our industry, now grassroots level people. So these are traders, guys who buy and sell cryptocurrencies. These are founders of cryptocurrency companies, cryptocurrency exchanges. We have economists and policy experts in the space, and guys who are interested in the space. And our question to them now was, you as the pole in the industry, what is the cause of friction? What is the challenge you face in terms of the regulator? Now that we've seen these challenges that CMA presented to them as the regulator, what does the industry feel will be a challenge from the perspective? Number one, from our perspective, we found that builders and DJs are guys who believe that cryptocurrency came to save the world. DJs are like, I can call them disciples of cryptocurrency. So the first challenge is the problem that these builders and DJs are operating in silos. Silos in the sense that apart from the attempt at public participation that the task force tried to do, we've noticed that regulators or regulatory institutions for a long time we have guys who sit in the boardroom and start shooting regulations out of thin air without properly engaging builders. Then we have builders who are just sitting in their rooms, building very innovative products without probably being in sync with what the regulatory atmosphere is. At least there's a semi-regulatory sandbox to try and capture that, but still, as you've seen, they present their own challenge. So we have two sets of people who we really wish for them to work together, but each of them is operating in their own silos. So that is the first challenge, that there is lack of close collaboration between the developers in the ecosystem and the builders. And now this webinar and BAK activities and the energy that this is bringing is now our attempt as a community to try to break this barrier. Our attempt as a community to try and close the collaboration gaps and make the builder community, the DGen community, and the regulator community highly collaborative, such that there's sufficient communication and coordination. So that was challenge number one. There's lack of close collaboration, which you are trying to close. The second challenge is a few bad players staining the whole industry. When you mention cryptocurrency, the first thing that comes to mind to a lot of people who are not native to the industry is that crypto is a scam. This is a pyramid scheme. This is a sin. Like, it's just the outrageous response and the bad PR surrounding cryptocurrency is crazy. This is due to a few bad players who are staining the industry. And one justification I usually give people is that just like any other financial industry, we've seen banks collapse. I mean, banks are properly regulated. It's a well-established, well-institutionalized industry. But despite that, we've seen bad players in the banking industry. And even the biggest stock exchange industry in the world, the New York Stock Exchange, Wall Street, we've seen, as much as it is a conventionally well and highly regulated industry, we've seen a lot of the world's biggest scams coming out of that sector. And it's a highly regulated industry. So the take to that is that these scams and these bad players are not only exclusive to the crypto industry, and therefore relating bad players to crypto industry alone is an injustice to the development of this industry. And if saying that, cryptocurrency should be shut down because somebody pulled out a token and scammed people, essentially saying then, okay, all banks should be shut down because some bank collapsed and went down with the funds of investors and depositors. So that is another challenge, just trying to paint cryptocurrency in good light. Then the other challenge which I've been singing along throughout this presentation is the myopic interpretation of cryptocurrencies rather than a deep dive in the unique use cases. Myopic in the sense of the shallow interpretation of what cryptocurrencies are. Yes, they're cryptocurrencies, but there are 7 branches of utility tokens that I just covered. And if we can have a forum of properly engaging regulators and understanding the intricacies and the uniqueness of this token and these digital assets, it will go a long way into defining and clarifying the best case scenario of regulating these assets in the most productive way possible, such that the industry has a thriving and enabling environment, and the regulator is able to get his fair share of tax, and the retail investor is protected. So even from a reading of the Finance Bill 2023 and all this proposed act, this theme still carries along. The interpretation of cryptocurrency seems to be a hard nut to crack. And so far, we feel, as a community, we feel like classifying all of them as securities doesn't do justice to them. And also now when it comes to, Roslyn already covered how cryptocurrencies are initiated. They're initiated through mining, we have airdrops, we have transfers, we have swaps, and all those different ways through which people acquire cryptocurrency. Defining all of them as transfers is also an injustice, because now this is a new and innovative way of doing things, and I would also encourage regulators to also adopt new and innovative regulations on how to approach this. They don't need to use the textbook approach of how the conventional financial industry of cryptocurrencies is being regulated to adopt this. So now, what are the regulatory opportunities for cryptocurrencies in Kenya? Now, this now leads up to, this whole discussion is up to what are the opportunities and how is it going forward? So from our perspective is that number one, as you've seen, the Capital Markets Amendment Bill trying to license and tax digital assets. We've seen the Finance Bill 23. We've seen the digital assets regulations. All these are a hint to us that government is trying to recognize and give a sense of approval to this particular industry as a valid and legitimate industry. We've been faced by a lot of skepticism, but now this is a wink from the government, or essentially a green light, that cryptocurrencies are probably a sector of the economy, and we should look at exploring them. The implication of this, well, the reason why we are saying this is, for instance, the digital assets tax to be introduced by Finance Bill is imposing tax on traders. The obligation to remit these taxes on exchanges. Most of these exchanges do not have Kenyan bank accounts because of the CBK cautionary notice that restrain banks from dealing with cryptocurrency products. But if you're putting these exchanges in a position whereby they have to remit tax for the transactions done, it would mean that CBK would have to lift their cautionary notice to allow the exchanges directly off-ramp their tokens into bank accounts so that that tax is remitted to the government. So from my perspective, the tax is a good thing, because the only way that would work, it will mean that CBK would have to lift that cautionary notice, so that for it to allow the players in the ecosystem to plug into the conventional payment ecosystem. So whether it be it M-Pesa or be it banks, for them to allow that tax remittance to work. So that is an opportunity the regulator ought to explore. But now we hope the subsidiary regulations and now more detailed regulations will come to this space, because the tax proposal is just one aspect for it. But I hope we'll have a subsidiary regulation that will now give a breakdown of how that interaction would look like. So I see tax as an opportunity for officially legitimizing cryptocurrency in Kenya and officially lifting the CBK cautionary notice and just letting the industry now thrive. Another opportunity is that now an opportunity to unlock new revenue streams. So if best case scenario for the government, this tax that they're trying to impose works, it will mean that the government will have more incentive to explore the industry further. Because, okay, we tried to tax the industry is now giving us a new source of revenue. So government is a new source of revenue. So for a government, is also a business. If they have a new source of revenue, what that mean to them? It will mean that they will be motivated to establish a proper regulatory framework that ensures compliance. Now, issues to do consumer protection will come in. Issues to do with anti-money laundering and counterterrorism finance will come in, and all that. So once the government taps into this revenue stream, it will be more incentivized to explore the industry further. So we also see that as an opportunity. The other regulatory opportunity is the sandbox and government initiatives that is driving towards adoption. We've been actively, as an industry, individual founders and even as BK, engaging the CMA regulatory sandbox. And it was good. They said that these are the challenges facing them. Now that they publish the challenges facing them, the opportunity there is we sit down with them and address those challenges one by one. How can we work together to address the challenge of capacity building? Oh, we can host webinars with the Institute of Economic Affairs. Okay, that can do. How can we address challenges of rogue exchanges? Oh, we can develop proposed licensing models. So that sandbox and initiatives allows for a platform for us to brainstorm and throw ideas back and forth. We've also seen the Nairobi International Financial Center, NIFC, whose agenda is to position Nairobi, Kenya, as the center for financial innovation in Africa. So the opportunity for this, for you to regard yourself as financial innovation in Africa, is to be pro-digital assets, because the biggest financial centers in the world, like Singapore, Dubai, and all that, have created an enabling environment for digital assets. So we also see that as an opportunity. The other regulatory opportunity I've seen personally is the hustler government agenda and the DeFi narrative. I believe this was captured, the DeFi narrative was captured slightly in the Rosalind's presentation when she was talking about peer-to-peer exchanges and peer-to-peer lending. So essentially, DeFi means decentralized finance, in the sense that we are pulling, we are trying to create financial inclusions to the guy at the bottommost of the pyramid. And the most interesting solutions that are trying to advance this DeFi narrative is blockchain based and Web3 solutions that are trying to do peer-to-peer loaning for chairmans. You have guys who are trying to do very interesting USSD applications, just guys in the bottommost level, guys who are living on $1 a day, can be able to tap into the bigger financial inclusion. We've also seen guys who are doing tokens in the financial market. So for instance, conventionally, guys who can tokenize real estate, such that somebody with as low as 10,000 can have a real estate investment. Tokenizing shares and tokenizing securities and products in the financial markets, so that somebody with as low as 1,000 can have a fraction of a bigger piece of the picture. So it's called fractional ownership. And that is part of the decentralized finance narrative of just financial inclusion. Like for perspective, what, for instance, fractional ownership or tokenization of real estate would mean, I can allow me to use an example of a development like Two Rivers. You see, for instance, if somebody wanted to invest in Two Rivers, you'll have to be a big ticket investor who probably will have to put down a minimum of 30 to 50 million Kenyan shillings for you to have either a flow or a square space of Two Rivers. But with digital, with blockchain-based innovations, tokenization of real estate, and this is happening in places like Switzerland and Singapore, somebody can take the whole flow and put it in the blockchain and fractionalize it, in the sense that somebody with as low as 10,000 Kenyan shillings can own a fraction of what will have been that big square space or acreage of land. So that is one narrative of decentralized finance, and just bringing financial inclusivity and financial access and financial empowerment down to the grassroots level. So we also see that as an opportunity for from the regulatory perspective and for the government to explore. So in other news, we've seen Moses Kuria flew, the CS for trade, Moses Kuria flew to Dubai recently, and he inked a deal with a foundation called the Venom Foundation. And the objective for that deal was that they're trying to establish a blockchain and Web3 innovation hub in Kenya. They're trying to make this one of the biggest innovation hubs in Africa. And we're waiting to see what comes out of that. In terms of digital assets adoption, from a comparative analysis, is that Nigeria is our biggest competitor. They've just released the blockchain policy this week. And I'm hoping our government and even us as stakeholders can keep up to speed. Because if we do not create an enabling environment for digital assets, what will happen is that these funds will flow to West Africa. And better resources for them, better opportunities for them, better job and employment opportunities for their youth. So I think that is the close of my presentation. Thank you very much. I'll be open to questions.
Thanks a lot, Alan. I think I got a lot from your presentation. I wouldn't want to rehash much of it. But as our participants prepare with their questions, let me just try to give a rundown of the key things that I got from your presentation. Of course, definitely the roadmap from 2015, that's a very important one. And the key milestones that we've achieved along the way to this year, up to what we have proposed within the finance bill and the Capital Markets Act that needs to be inculcated into the finance bill, that needs to go through. And then the key question that came from you that I got, I think we need to take this forward as well, is this classification of securities, which is a question that we are posing as well to the Central Bank of Kenya. And just to mention, we had invited them to this particular webinar as well, but they were unable to give us a conclusive response. So I think we'll still follow up, because this is a discussion that's not ending today or now, just to get a hold of them and try to see if they can give us the lowdown on that classification, taking into consideration the heavy test that we are privy to now learn about from you. Thanks a lot for that. In terms of the regulatory challenges, I think within the industry, if I recall, personal experience with the issue of collaboration, and of course, something to do with bad players tarnishing the name of the entire community. There was a specific community that was trying to sell blockchain more like a multi-level marketing thing. Perhaps you'd want to speak to that and how that happens. And maybe that's something that needs to be looked at in depth and to see really going forward, how do you now put in place measures to negate such kind of people from actually conducting that particular negative business that's harming the positive name of the community as we had. And then the opportunities are numerous, as you mentioned. Definitely, government is interested. As you can see, one of the things they have mentioned is taxation of digital assets, and this emanates from this particular space. The regulated sandbox that is in place, and perhaps more needs to be done by the CMA to actualize the recommendations that were made by the task force on AI, blockchain and AI back in 2019. And of course, the hustle agenda that you mentioned, trying to push forth the agenda of decentralized finance to inculcate more of the Kenyan population into the non-banked system. So as it is, just to make sure everyone is within the space. Of course, with the new deal that Moses Kura inked, we are curious to see how that will pan out. So thanks a lot, Bwana Alan, for that presentation. And I want to open this to the plenary session. Perhaps if you have a question, you could type it out in our chat box at the far right corner of this window, or you could raise your hand. There's a tool that allows you to raise your hand. I will see you and request you to unmute yourself, that facility is now available. Unmute yourself and go ahead to ask your question.
I think you can go ahead and answer the first question in the chat while guys are still figuring out.
So just for the interest of everyone, and I think both Rosalie and Alan can weigh in on this, what advice do you have for a foreign entity looking to establish its platform in Kenya? I think perhaps that's maybe a cryptocurrency platform or blockchain. I think guys are better placed to respond to that amicably. Okay, go ahead. Alan?
Yeah, so what advice do you have for foreign entity looking to establish its platform in Kenya? First of all, I'll say I don't exactly know what entity is trying to establish. That's a very, I don't know, should I say it's a vague question? Because maybe Alex can just unmute and clarify. Is it trying an exchange, an NFT platform, a real estate tokenization platform, or Alex can just unmute and ask your question.
Sure. Okay. So back to you, Alex. In the meantime, I will ask you my own questions because I have a couple, and this is to Roslyn. In your presentation, you mentioned a couple of issues that are still with us insofar as this space is concerned, and one of them is security issues. And how do you think this can be, what are the measures that can be put in place just to try and ensure that whoever puts their funds in the cryptocurrency space feels secure enough to do so? That's one. And also, you had mentioned that a couple of countries are using cryptos around the world. Perhaps in Africa, you could state to us which particular countries is this most widespread, and if you have numbers to back that up, that would be important. And of course, I asked you within the 1.14 trillion value of cryptos, what percentage is Kenya's in that? Yeah. So that's to you. And to Alan, you mentioned how we test. So what is your proposal to the CBK insofar as the classification of securities is concerned, looking at the how we test metrics? And also, I think You mentioned the issue of highly evolving technological space and the need for government to keep up with that in view of regulations of cryptocurrencies within Kenya. What is your proposal on how to achieve that? So back to you, Rosalind, before we come to Alan as he prepares.
All right, thank you. Please upload the presentation. I actually have a slide that highlights a few of the statistics. On the question of security, then, let me begin by highlighting some of the risks that are associated with scams, so that if you see any of these red flags, then don't even send funds to begin with, because scams tend to do any of these things that I have highlighted. So sometimes you'll find that they promise unrealistic gains and they guarantee returns, because especially on Telegram and sometimes on Twitter, not sure how often it happens on Facebook, but mostly on Telegram. So somebody will, reach out in a message, tell you, hello, where are you? They try to find out some information about you, what you do, and then they say that they have an investment opportunity. They often proceed to ask you to create a wallet on what looks like a legitimate exchange, but it's often not an exchange. It's just a platform that somebody has engineered to siphon somebody's funds. But if in the very beginning of the conversation that this person or entity is promising that you will have your money doubled in a week, or your money doubled in a month, or your money doubled in 2 days, that's the first red flag for people to not send funds, and they should avoid that, report it even to a few channels here and there, or at least raise some awareness, because that's how scammers tend to thrive, because people don't know what to expect with cryptocurrencies. Yes, there are those which have increased in price, but when you understand the element of risk, then you can appreciate that there are low cycles and there are high cycles. So if a project keeps on, or an entity keeps on promising that you only have high returns and there's no risk, and especially if they say this is risk free, those are very high warning signs for people to avoid. Then those people also they rely heavily on referrals, and that's why the association of pyramid schemes with cryptocurrencies is quite difficult to break for most people. So if this recruiter is insisting, bring your family, bring your friends, bring your professional contacts on LinkedIn, that's another serious red flag. It's just that these people, they are scammers and they use the word cryptocurrencies. We've already seen some of these things also happen with issues to do with buying land, because you find that they claim to own a specific parcel of land, but if you do your due diligence or go to the specific place where they claim they have the plots of land, you can't find markers, or you find that people have already built over there, and it only takes probably 2 or 3 red flags for you to tell that this is an actual scam. So to contrast these highlights of what scams look like, a legitimate cryptocurrency wallet will allow you to have control of your password, control of your account information, and nobody will manage that for you. So if anybody presents themselves as maybe a broker, and especially a recruiter, saying that they will, and I've seen this happening in even in the diaspora, where somebody says they'll manage your account for you so that you don't have to deal with the complexities of a cryptocurrency. That's a serious warning sign. So for these, also for a legitimate cryptocurrency wallet, you will find that it's it has a verified site, or it has what you call a secure link on the website. And this, once you're able to tell the main wallet service providers, just like Alan had highlighted earlier, Binance, for example, in Kenya, Coinbase in the US, although it's not fully operational in Africa yet, and a few other services like Bitlato in which is also accessible in Kenya, then you will be able to see that you can fully control your account from the end to the beginning. So it just takes some due diligence for people to secure their funds, and the best rule of thumb is to make sure that you have a an online wallet and an offline backup, such as you actually write on a book and not a piece of paper, a book that you can actually trace this, you've made a cryptocurrency purchase on this date, this is the wallet information, and this is what you call your, your private key, your public key, and your seed phrase. So this information is always prompted up on legitimate sites. Illegitimate sites do not allow you to control your funds. That's the biggest difference. So in terms of statistics, then there are different reports by Chainalysis and by other ranking sites. So it's been contentious to say that we have 4 million users of cryptocurrency in Kenya because it's possible for example, one person to have multiple accounts for multiple purposes. So you'll find that somebody has maybe a Bitcoin wallet, which does not support other cryptocurrencies. You can find somebody has a multi-wallet platform which can handle Bitcoin stable coins, and this is what you call like a centralized exchange wallet. So Binance tends to be one of the most used in Africa, both Nigeria, so in Nigeria, South Africa, and Kenya, and they've been quite forward in terms of community events just to educate people, and they're doing a good job in terms of just bringing people together to facilitate crypto education. Right now, aside from that, people being able to have multiple types of wallets, there's no there's no centralized authority or space where people are declaring that they actually own this wallet. So the number of 4.25 million could be that you have maybe 500,000 people who own multiple wallets, or it's not a pinpoint accurate picture, because again, if we had the 4.25 million Kenyans who own cryptocurrencies, then arguably we would not have so many instances of scams, and the regulatory push would actually be different, because again, if we have trading volumes of about $45 million every month or annually, based on the rankings in Kenya and globally, as Kenya tends to rank as at last year, based on Chainalysis, it was number 19 globally. And in terms of P2P volumes in 2020 and 2021, Kenya was ranking in the top 5 countries globally, right? So if we translate these numbers locally then and say that we do have 4.25 million people transacting in crypto, that is 10% of the population, we would actually see crypto volumes moving a needle in the for example, Kenya's GDP, but that is not yet to be the case, again, because of the challenges that we have. So the numbers are the numbers can tell one part of the story, but they do not tell the full scope of the story, just as Alan has broken it down to show we have different types of cryptocurrencies, different types of use cases, and different bottlenecks, especially in terms of reporting. Because if the reporting, for example, is to be easier, and for example, crypto services get access to banking services, that's just one rail of these this money actually moving within the Kenyan ecosystem. Otherwise, we have quite a number of metrics that may say Kenya, for example, is leading, but for example, in this year, when we have 3 exchange services which have either shut down or limited the access to Kenyans, that is Paxful, local Bitcoins, and I think local cryptos. They've, when they shut down, then the question is, where are these volumes going? We don't necessarily have many other exchanges that are available to Kenyans to transact. So it's quite a journey to understand now an accurate picture of the metrics around Kenya, but it tends to rank among the top in terms of P2P volumes globally.
Thanks, Roslyn. Thanks a lot, Eugene. Yeah, the only thing you didn't mention is how many countries in Africa have crypto as their medium of exchange accepted.
Sorry. Okay. So, in terms of adoption, again, in the African landscape, Kenya, South Africa, and Nigeria, but mostly Nigeria, then Nigeria first, Kenya second, South Africa third, Morocco fourth. In Morocco, cryptocurrencies are not expressly permitted in terms of usage, similar to Kenya. It's a cautionary notice. Quite recently, there was a case of a young man who had paid, I think, for a Ferrari in Bitcoin, and he was, arrested by the authorities. But digging deeper into the case, it's alleged that it's a fraud case. That the money that he was, paying for the Ferrari with in the first place was from a questionable source. But in the media reporting, it seemed to be that Bitcoin is a problem. So it's a bit of a gray area, and it alludes also to another challenge in terms of media reporting, that we have a lot of inaccuracies in established media platforms that do not create an accurate picture of what, how cryptocurrencies are either being adopted. It tends to be often misreported and quite frankly in some instances sensational. However, away from that, in Nigeria, the authorities are working to integrate and adopt blockchain. They've already done a test of an e-naira, although that has not taken off as widely as was expected. But there's still cautionary on cryptocurrencies. For Kenya, Alan has covered that quite robustly, so I won't get it too deep into it. But for South Africa, then there's a framework to look into how to integrate the adoption of cryptocurrencies progressively in the country. So the only African country that has accepted Bitcoin, for example, as legal tender is the Central African Republic, and it's also in its initial stages, so we can't say it's either successful or not, because there are still quite a number of things that need to take off for Bitcoin to be, the preferred use case for moving money, for example, in the country. There's a need to have more people who are, even just financially literate, earning income, trading, and moving money in the first place before Bitcoin can be a measure of success. But I think it's a great case study to follow, similar to what El Salvador has done. So in the wider African landscape, Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa, Botswana as well have incredible milestones that they are making in terms of collaborating with the crypto community, because last year they did issue the first virtual asset service provider license to Yellow Card as a crypto service provider. So that definitely will offer insights for other countries to see how to integrate and how to work with or collaborate with virtual asset service providers. And we'll see what will come of that, because it begins with one country definitely showing the way, and other countries seeing how it works, so that the successes can be replicated across other jurisdictions.
Very true. Thanks a lot for that insight. Alan, you can weigh in on the questions I asked. You can add on to anything I've left.
Okay, thank you very much. Just to, in Africa, as Lawson has pointed out, Central African Republic has been very proactive in adopting crypto. So there was that acknowledgement of the tender. Then there was a tokenization of one of the mining facilities called the Sango project, where they're trying to tokenize and fractionalize ownership of cryptocurrency in that project. So to that extent, that is West Africa is very big in adoption of digital assets, essentially. Now, to answer, I can now go to my question. The questions you asked me. Number one was you asked me the question on how we test and how we can give a breakdown and a response to classification of tokens. So just allow me to share my screen, or I just prepared a short presentation separately.
Go ahead.
So the Howey, as indicated, the Howey test was a test that was relied by the court in Weissman Taxman Ventures versus CMA. And this is what has led to conclude that cryptocurrencies are securities in Kenya. The origin of this test is the US Supreme Court decision in the SEC versus WJ Howey. This is about a 1960 case, whereby they're just trying to understand what qualifies as an investment or other security that will be subject to SEC regulation, which in Kenya would be subject to CMA regulation. So I'm going to break down each token and weigh it against the Howey test and see if each token passes the Howey test. And given that Roslyn is here, I'll also allow her to weigh in. So on the left, I've created a token, defined it. And on the right, I want us to weigh whether that token will pass the Howey test. So for a token to pass, the idea of a Howey test is to end up classifying an asset as a security. And our argument from the community is that not all cryptocurrencies are securities. Therefore, our argument is that the Howey test is not the right way to look at it. So I'm going to give a breakdown of each token. We see if it passes the Howey test. So we see which tokens can be classified as securities and which tokens should just remain as currencies. So 4 things. The Howey test, there needs to be an investment of money. The idea for that investment of money, the consideration is that there's an expectation of profit from the investment. And of course, the investment has to be in a common enterprise. Like if we're investing, for instance, in a common coin or something like that, then of course, whether profits come out from the efforts of a promoter of the token or the coin or a third party. So let's just look at utility tokens. So I will define utility tokens as tokens that provide access to specific platforms and services. So somebody who is getting a utility tokens wants to use their token not for speculating or trading purposes, but most of the time, sometimes the token might get valueless, but most of the time they're getting that token so that they get access to something in the ecosystem, like an event or a governance token is another form of utility token, voting rights in a DAO, or they're using that token to do something rather than trading. So the only reason why this person is acquiring this token is not with the expectation of profit, but for him to have rights or privileges to access certain things within the blockchain ecosystem. So to this extent, of course, the investment of money for you to get an utility token. Some are, so number one, whether there's investment of money for utility tokens. So as Rosalie had covered, how people obtain tokens is not through purchase per se. There are some tokens that we as people in the crypto community get them through airdrops, where somebody is doing a project, they give some certain people tokens for something, which means me as Alan, I've not invested money to even get that token. I was given because I'm a member of certain community for me to use within that community to do something. So given that the purpose of that token was just to use it within the context of that community, of course the token must get value, but there was no expectation of profit per se. Some of these tokens are just strictly utility tokens. So there is no clear expectation of profit. So one of the banks that some of these utility tokens, there's no investment for money, is investment not for money, but for rights and privileges in a community. And to that extent, there's no expectation of profit per se. So the fact that it has failed those 2 tests, I believe that classifying utility tokens as a security will now subject that token to tax and even hinder more proactivity and more use cases for utility tokens. So such kind of tokens, from my perspective, should just be left as is and just classified not as securities, but either the regulator can just classify them as utility tokens. There's an exhaustive list of utility tokens based on the different use cases in the community. So we can go to security tokens. Security tokens are now the ones that now, for instance, by our ICOs are from coins gained through ICOs are a form of security tokens, whereby a company rolls out tokens, so that raises funds from the public to invest in a project, and the public is expecting to reap profits from the project. So I can give an example of what the guys in the Kinico case are doing. They're trying to roll out a security token whereby they roll out tokens, you invest in their tokens, then they use that money to build infrastructure or build whatever they want to build. Then if profit comes, you get a profit. So is there investment for money? Yes, I've bought the security token. Is there an expectation of profit from my investment? Yes, there is. Is it a common enterprise? Of course, it's a common enterprise. Is there a promoter that is making profits? Yes, the promoter of the token is making profit. So a security token to that extent passes the Howey test. So such kind of token can be classified as securities under Kenyan regulation from our perspective. Then NFTs, same standard. Let's go to NFTs. NFTs means non-fungible token. I believe Rosalina defined this. Usually they're in form of artwork or unique. They're essentially in form of artwork, music, and audiovisual, sort of audiovisual, either photographies, artwork, music, videos, and any other form of audiovisual material that is dear to someone. And essentially they wish to auction it. So in the old times, we've seen paintings like Mona Lisa, and we've seen Vincent van Gogh paintings, and we've seen Picasso's paintings, and all that. They were unique artworks that a certain group of people saw value in them, and those people decided to collect them for speculative purposes. So when they go on auction, they buy, then eventually after the price goes up, they sell off at a profit. So similarly, that culture of finding artwork and music as a form of investment has been adopted by the blockchain, and that is what is known as NFTs. So digital assets. So we have artists who are doing their musicians who are doing albums. We have painters who are doing paintings, and artists who are doing a lot of stuff on NFTs. So does an NFT pass as a how it is? Is that an investment for money? Yes, the NFT is speculative token. So most people who would invest in NFT will invest in it with an expectation of a profit. But is the investment of money in a common enterprise? Remember, an NFT means non-fungible token, which means each token is unique in its own way. So that if Alan is owning an NFT for something, Rosalind won't be owning the same NFT unless I sell it to her. So each NFT is unique in its own way, that they're essentially unique digital collectibles. So there's no common enterprise per se by somebody. You see, for instance, I've used security tokens whereby somebody's floating tokens and say, here's my company. I am selling shares in my company for this. But the difference with the NFTs is that I, as Alan, can just get one NFT for a photo of me when I was a kid, and it sells. And they just sell it to one person. So there's no common enterprise whereby over 1,000 people are investing on the same exact product. And for the fact that the NFT fails that test, we feel like NFTs in themselves cannot also be classified as securities. So they either just be classified as digital collectibles, or the regulator be more innovative, or we come up with a more innovative classification for it. But we can't use a 1960 classification to classify a 21st century innovation. That is being retrogressive. So the other type of asset is governance tokens. And as I mentioned, governance tokens are a form of utility tokens. So in blockchain, there are things called DAOs. A DAO is a decentralized autonomous organization. A DAO is like a chama. So imagine that chama of yours with 10 people, 20 people. But now put it on blockchain whereby now guys can vote, guys can pull their funds together and all that. For them to be on the DAO and exercise these rights, they need a governance token to allow them voting rights and some privileges. So most of these DAO tokens are, when we weigh them against the how we test, not all DAOs are for profit making. So as a matter of fact, you have DAOs like Refi DAO and DAOs that are just meant for charitable purposes. So is there an investment for money? Yes, but is there an expectation for profit? No. It is specific to the use case of the DAO. Some DAOs are just for charitable ventures and profit making. As much as the investment is in a common enterprise, there are no profits. So that means DAO and governance tokens fail the Howey test. And to that extent, it's an argument that it does not make sense to classify governance tokens, or I can call them DAO tokens, as securities. Now let's move to stablecoin.
Can you kindly move a bit faster? We are out of time. Yeah, thanks.
Ooh, sorry. I think I can conclude with stablecoins, but then I will share the detail. I'll do a detailed write-up and share it with you.
Much
But the argument
appreciated.
I'm making is that there's the seven categories of tokens, and we cannot put all of them under the Howey test. And given that all of them do not pass the Howey test, we cannot classify all of them as securities. Because, for instance, even if CBK was to roll out the CBDC, CBK would not expect the CBDC to be classified as securities. It will expect the CBDC to be put on the same threshold as the Kenyan legal tender, because it will be used for payments and all that. So that is I can just wrap it up from there in terms of the how it is. I think I'll share the detailed write-up with you, and we can explore it further.
Much appreciated. Yes, I think it will be very important to have that particular detailed write-up, so that in as much as we want to propose what to include in terms of securities of cryptos within the ambit of securities, then we know which ones do fall within there and which ones do not, based on this criteria. Rosalie, I think this goes straight to you, but Alan, you can weigh in. So Jairus is asking, Jairus, is a colleague of mine. He's asking, how do cryptocurrencies compare to the standard currencies as far as stability in value is concerned, even before we imagine the possibility of crypto as a legal tender? So I think it's an issue of volatility and stability. Rosalind?
Yes, indeed. It's a matter of volatility. So just as Alan has broken down, allow me to just speak an example of a stable coin. So the largest stable coins in the market, the largest stable coin currently is the USDT Tether. It works by being paired in a certain parity with the US dollar. So you can find that its volatility over time is extremely low, so such that one USDT today will still be one USDT tomorrow, and it's been the most preferred for payments, actually more than Bitcoin or some of the other utility based cryptocurrencies. So based on that,
right. Thanks a lot.
based on ease of settlement.
I see no other question. You want to weigh in, Alan? Well, I think that's fair enough response from Rosalind.
No worries.
Yeah, she has covered it well. I will not add anything.
You not attempt to add any any supporting things. Anyway, so thanks a lot. As we come to the end, kindly I would request both Rosalind and Alan to give their final remarks and end with just one thing. Perhaps to Alan, let me begin with you. What do you see as the future of cryptocurrency regulations in Kenya? And to Rosalind, a very wide one. What is the future of cryptocurrencies in Kenya in general? So over to you, Alan, then Rosalind.
I think I'll start because I just focus on regulation, then Rosalind cover. Now, as you saw in my presentation, I mentioned that given that the government is interested in taxing these digital assets, it means they're low-key green lighting. So we've seen the tax by the government, then we've seen the deal inked by Moses Kuria with the Venom Foundation. That would mean that in terms of regulation, the government would have to start aligning and structuring favorable regulations that will create an enabling environment for digital assets to thrive, so that they have a new sector of the economy that they can properly tax. So from my perspective, the future of regulations is twofold. Number one, of course, the tax regulations will start first. Probably the government will really be keen on taxing because the government is really looking for alternative sources of revenue. And once the tax kick in and revenues are stable, we'll have more consumer protection regulations, and we'll start having a more robust and more refined institutional framework that would now take lead in shaping regulations. So what would that look like 5 years from now? Probably under the CBK, there will be a department for cryptocurrency and digital assets, or under the CMA, there will be a department for cryptocurrency and digital assets. Or alternatively, there will be a whole cryptocurrency markets authority of its own. So that will depend with how the amount of revenue this taxes is going to generate, and the amount of disruption, the deals the government is signing to that extent. But there's no reverse gear to this. We've seen the government is adopting, and that is the way forward. Thank you.
Right. Thanks a lot, Alan. I like the part of consumer protection and perhaps a department in the next few years. Rosalind, in terms of the future, and of course, you can mention perhaps a few use cases going forward.
Thank you so much. Thank you also for the opportunity to present at this point. I'll say that the future is great in terms of we have an opportunity to collaborate and to share with each other the learning lessons that the industry has to offer, because none is the wiser than the other in terms of being even experts in the industry, because even for the experts, innovations are coming in every other day. So we have to collaborate. We need to be patient with one another, and we need to create this future that will actually enable us to thrive as a country in terms of crypto. Because if we only leave it to regulators to figure it out, it will be unfair to them. And if we figure it only to the crypto companies to break it down for the rest of the nation, it also is a burden that they cannot exactly handle on their own. So we actually need all hands on deck. No one, whether the good thing about the crypto industry is that whether you are in the medical field, whether you're in agriculture, whether you're a teacher or in any respective field, you can learn something about cryptocurrencies. And that's the great equalizer and great opportunity that we have to learn together, collaborate on this future, and use it to our benefit the same way that we've managed to maximize benefits on other internet technologies. So it's an open call. Let's learn and let's make the most value that we can out of this.
Thanks a lot, Rosalind, and thanks a lot, Alan. Let me take the opportunity to thank you humbly for accepting our invite and, of course, taking your time of your busy schedule to give us your presentations. We don't take it for granted, and for that, the Institute of Economic Affairs is really, really thankful. Personally, I've learned a lot. And the way forward on this is that we'll keep this discussion going. This is an area that's not leaving us anytime soon, as I mentioned earlier on. And out of this particular webinar, we'll do a brief, which we'll share with all of you. And just to mention that the Institute of Economic Affairs is a membership organization. We allow members in all categories. So we have student membership, corporate membership, and all these other categories. And you can reach us through our social media platforms, or you can drop an email to us through our communications department, who will get back to you on the process of registering as a member. So without much further ado, I'd like to thank you all for taking time to attend, to listen, and to also interact with us. Thank you so much.